Welcome to the Phil Cooke Podcast. Today, we've got a fantastic episode. I'm interviewing Chris Sonksen, who is the founder of ChurchBoom. You may have heard it. He's a former pastor, still connected with his church in a big way, blew it up to multiple campuses, but now he focuses on helping other churches through coaching, through an organization called Church Rescue, which I love, helping churches go to the next level. And so his insight is absolutely brilliant. We're going to be talking about drift today, things as a leader that start almost invisibly, and you don't see it for a long time until you see it. And sometimes when you see it, it's a little late. So how to be more observant, how to see some of the dominant ways that your staff can drift under you and beneath you. So it's going to be, I'm super excited about the episode. And so stay tuned. When this is over, send it to your pastor, send it to pastors, ministry leaders you know, because this is a message people need to hear. So stay tuned, and it's going to be a great interview. Well, Chris, thank you so much for being on the podcast. I'm honored you're here. This is the first time we've officially met, and yet I've attended a church that you founded without realizing you were connected to it. I've read an article recently that you've written based on one of your earlier books that I think is just absolutely fantastic. But welcome to the podcast.
Oh, man, no, thank you. Thanks for letting me be a part of it. It's an absolute honor. I love what's going on in the back. Is that an A-frame?
You know what? This is a bonus. It was a bonus room when we bought the house. And I thought, if I put up my posters, our movie and TV, if I put them up it's on a slant, it's going to look like a sports bar or something. I was worried, but they came out okay.
It looks like an A-frame. I feel like I'm in
I'm over the garage actually.
It looks like a church in the chapel in the woods somewhere.
You make it sound much more glamorous than it is.
It's glamorous, very glamorous. That's awesome.
Well, listen, you've had an interesting journey. You've been a pastor. Now you're helping rescue churches. Tell me a little bit about where you've come from.
Yeah. So again, thanks for letting me be on. So the podcast, my wife and I started SouthHills Church many years ago in Southern California. God did some awesome things and still doing awesome things. Grew it to 12 campuses.
Wow.
And started from nothing and grew it to 12 campuses. About 5 years ago, just felt we had this thing that we kind of did at SouthHills called ChurchBoom, where we kind of coached some pastors and would help pastors, whatever. And kind of was birthed out of a lot of people reaching out to us. And about 5 years ago, I just felt like we were going to take ChurchBoom and move it out and then hand the role over to the executive pastor, make him the lead pastor. I'm still involved, but obviously nothing like I was, just small percentage. We took ChurchBoom, and it's grown just tremendously over the last 5 years. We've gone from me and my assistant to 64 people on the team, and we have 5 lanes. We got a ChurchBoom network. We have a ChurchBoom University where pastors can learn on a regular basis leadership. We have the ChurchBoom coaching certification program if you want to be certified. We have executive coaching for churches that are, maybe anywhere from 300 up to 10,000, and they just want some executive coaching. And then by far our largest lane and our most aggressive lane is Church Rescue, which is the 5th lane. And we help churches under 100 get over 100. And so we've got 539 churches in the program right now.
That's fantastic. I mean, that's people don't talk about those little churches enough, I think, because we've done a lot of work with the Salvation Army over the years with their media outreaches, and they're planting churches in very, very difficult places. And there's just a lot of churches that aren't ever going to become mega churches because they're in the middle of nowhere or at a difficult circumstance.
Yep. They are. They're there. And matter of fact, right now, I don't know, how much you read into the statistics, but right now America, at least in 2025, America closed 3 churches for every one that opened. Now, some of those became multi-site, and everybody always talks about that. I'm like, okay, right. So let's say that article is, or that stat is 30% off. I doubt it, but let's say. So it's not really 300 a Sunday. It's only 200 a Sunday. Wow. That shut down in America. On average, we shut down on a low end, it would have been 200 per Sunday. And the average church attendance has dropped radically. I think the darker the churches get, the darker America gets. So we've created a whole team that just, if you're under 100, we're going to get you over 100 for a year. You don't have to pay for it. It's free. Coaching's free. The retreat is free. The counseling is free. We raise the money. We're just helping churches, and it's been an incredible growth of what God has done.
Now, I come from a communication media background, and one of the problems I see with churches that struggle with media issues is pastors go to Bible college, they go to seminary, they learn about how to preach, they learn how about leading a church, but they really don't learn a lot about the practical aspects that you're dealing with or that I'm dealing with from a media perspective. It seemed like a real need out there.
Oh, it's huge. Yeah, it always comes down to, I always say it comes down to staff, leadership, strategy, or structure. It's one of those three is the problem. But they don't have the help they need. I always say this, most pastors I meet have a lot of passion and no process.
Wow.
And the passion is great. You need to have it, but you also have to have process. How are you going to grow this church? How are you going to develop it? How do you get more people here? How do you get those people to keep coming back? How do you get those people engaged? How do you focus on the growth engines? That has to happen. It has to. Otherwise, the church dies.
Yeah, it's amazing to me the difference leadership can make. I mean, I've seen churches that were dwindling and dying, and another pastor came in and took it over as a campus or a satellite, and it suddenly exploded. It's just interesting how different leadership can impact a church.
Oh, 100%. So we're working with the leaders. We're working with their team on the rescue side of things. We call it rescue. We call it Church Rescue, which is our fifth initiative of ChurchBoom. We stole it from Bar Rescue. We just we just thought, well, it's the same thing. But yeah, it is. It's a leadership issue among other things, for sure.
Now, have you between us now, have you ever given up on a church that was too far gone?
I don't know if we've ever given up. I don't think we have. But it is difficult when we're working with hundreds of churches, and it is difficult when you look and you think, I don't know if this guy is really meant to be a lead pastor.
Yes.
But really it isn't about that. It's more about them giving up. So they get into a program once a month, they get on Zoom. We start resourcing them month 3, month 4, month 5, month 6. They don't show up to that one. They don't show up to that one.
Yeah.
And then they don't grow, and then there's a problem. So I would say 99% of the time they give up. But we've got a good rate. We've got about a slightly over an 80% success rate of pastors going through the whole thing. And
that's great.
So far it's going really well.
That's really, really good. So again, let's go into church rescue a little bit more. I mean, how bad off does the church have to be for you to step in and say, we can help here?
Yeah. Well, again, we just say the one statement, Phil. Hey, if you're under 100, we want to get you over 100.
Okay.
There's something magical, I think, when they start getting into, like, for instance, I got a text on Sunday. I don't do the coaching for the churches under 100. We got a lot of team members that do that.
Yeah.
But I got a text from one of our team members. Hey, the guy we call them cohort groups. The guy in our group that church is running 55 when we met them, and they weren't sure how they're going to pay the bills. Today they had 140. Well, I don't know the guy. I don't know if that guy's going to grow it to 200.
Yeah.
But let's say he just levels out at 150. 150 pays bills. 150 is a decent size enough army to make a difference in his community. 150 gives you some money to go into missions. Like stuff, this is what we always say. We're just trying to get churches that are in the emergency room out of the emergency room. That's all we're trying to do. And
I love it. I love it. So anyway, I connected with you because of the article you wrote called The Slow Drift, When What You Tolerate Turns Toxic. It's a great article. It's online, and I'll provide links to everybody in the show notes. But I tell you, we've consulted with so many churches, particularly since, my book, Church on Trial, came out, and we've been involved in a lot of crisis communication situations. And I've just seen these things working that pastors never notice. Mm-hmm. And it's that slow drift you're talking about that is almost under the radar.
Yeah. Well, it is. It's actually the article that you're referring to was really birthed out of a book. I've written several books, but a couple books back, there was a book I wrote called Saving Your Church from Itself. And the subtitle is really, I think, the secret sauce of everything. The subtitle of the book was 6 Subtle Behaviors That Tear Teams Apart.
Wow.
And the key word, I think, in all of that is subtle.
Yeah.
It's pretty, I mean, once in a while it's blatant and out there and someone's tearing your team apart, tearing the church apart, a staff member that's drifting, whatever. That's the article called Slow Drift, same concept.
Yeah.
Yeah, sometimes it's blatant, but most of the time it's not. It's a subtle drift that you need to be aware of.
Now, one of the things you say early in the article is most leaders, pastors, wait for a smoking gun. And I'll tell you, that hit me like a bullet because my dad was a pastor in Charlotte, North Carolina. And in the late 60s, it was a small church. It was about 450 people. And I think that was the biggest we'd ever gotten. But in the late 60s, the charismatic renewal was happening. This was a Presbyterian church. And he started preaching about the Holy Spirit. And we started growing. People loved it. But one elder didn't like it. And he started working behind the scenes. And my dad noticed it, but he didn't respond to it quickly enough. And after a year or so, he ended up getting my dad fired from the church. In fact, I was a freshman in college when I got that call from my dad that they'd just been fired from the church we grew up in. Yeah. And but that was a perfect case where he knew what was going on, but was waiting for something big to happen, and he waited too long.
Yeah. Well, and that's both in the article and the book, the whole concept is when you see it here, you need to deal with it. Sometimes we don't deal with it. And I'm not saying this is the case for your dad, but sometimes you don't deal with it because we avoid conflict.
Right.
Sometimes we don't deal with it because we fear the result of it. Sometimes we don't deal with it because, we're addicted to approval. And I always say that you can't lead with authority if you're addicted to approval. And so if you don't deal with it here and you wait to deal with it over here, here's what I always say: pay now or pay later. But if you pay later, you'll always pay more. Yeah,
boy, that's so true. And boy, every point you make, I just love the way you stated it. Because, for instance, point number 1 is a drift toward pride in someone you lead. Now, that's not overt. You're not talking about overt pride that suddenly this guy just shows up and is, a super proud guy. But suddenly he stops being curious and starts being certain about his ideas, starts getting locked into things.
Yeah.
Little subtle things. So it's not overt or obvious, but noticing where it begins is critical.
Oh, everything. The key word for everything, Phil, is subtle. You have to, as a leader, as a lead pastor, you have to be aware for the subtle little things that are happening so that you can address those things. So on the word pride, I'll give you a quick example. Several years ago, one of our largest campuses, the campus pastor, I could sense the drift was happening.
Yep.
And I talked to him one day, and we sat there at a restaurant or coffee, I don't know, whatever, but we're talking. And I just said, hey, I'm noticing you're drifting. I noticed that it doesn't feel like our heart's connected. I noticed that the people on your team, you guys seem to be a unit that's separate from everybody else. But here's the thing I really noticed, Phil. And I told him this. I said, here's the thing I noticed the most. Now it goes with the word pride that you just mentioned.
Right.
Here's what I noticed. And he looked at me and he was kind of defensive. He goes, well, what do you notice? I said, you've been on this team for 5 years. Every time we sit down together, you pull out a pen and a paper and you take notes on everything I say. But the last 3 or 4 times we've met, you don't take notes anymore because you think I have nothing else to say to you.
That's good.
And I said, I've noticed that. And I said, something's changed. And it was pride. Like, he's sitting there. He's at a big campus. He was given a big campus. He didn't grow the big campus. He was given a big campus. And for whatever reason, sometimes leaders think that because they're standing on third, they got a triple.
Oh, yeah.
That no one helped to get them there. And that's not true.
That's so good. So good. Another thing that I see is your second point was artificial harmony replacing healthy tension. Because I work in media, I'm the creative guy. So creative conflict, it's important. We want to go back and forth and argue about stuff. Right. But I have seen situations where people were pretending to be in unity, but they really weren't.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. So artificial harmony again is, like you said, you're pretending to be in unity, but you're not in unity. And I think those two words together are very interesting artificial harmony. It's like, that's not a phrase you hear very often.
That's right.
It's
That's
very
true.
unique. It's artificial harmony. It's not really real. But I do see that a lot. I think that falls quite a bit, I think, on lead pastors, where I see a bit of a problem in a team member. I see a little bit of drifting. I feel like there's something wrong, but we act like everything's fine. I go into the meeting, I feel it, but I don't say anything. And you live in artificial harmony. And a piece of fruit that goes sour doesn't become sweet again. So the farther that situation goes, the worse it's going to get. So I think as a lead pastor, you have to just decide. This is what you have to decide. This is what I always say. You may not be the fastest growing church in America. You may not be the biggest church in America, but you determine right now as a lead pastor, you will be the healthiest.
Wow, that's good.
You can control that. I think sovereignty is, Craig Groeschel grows a big church. I think there's sovereign things that God does for big, fast growing churches. 100% agree with that. But health is a choice, not as much as a sovereignty.
Ooh.
Just, do you want to be healthy or not?
That's good.
And you're going to have to be able to go through the tunnel of conflict to be there, and you're going to have to avoid artificial harmony.
Wow. All right, number 3.
Yes, sir.
Isolation masquerading as maturity. Boy, that's good stuff. You have a great line in that. A trusted leader doesn't stop working; they stop connecting.
Yes. Well,
tell me about that.
Yeah, I again remember the subtitle of the original book is 6 Subtle Behaviors. The behavior is isolation, meaning they start to not connect with the staff anymore. I was just in where was I yesterday? Texas, and I was teaching a church with large staff, and I said, "Hey, here's when you're going to notice it. You're going to notice it when they barely show up on time, if not late. They're the first to leave. They're not connecting with the team anymore, and they probably have found a subgroup that is now believing the same way that they believe, whatever that may be."
Yeah.
And when you start to see like you're not connected, something's happening here. Not just as a lead pastor, but you're not connected with any of the team. You're not connected with any of the people. You've got a little subgroup going. When that is happening, the drift is beginning. I call it leader drift. The leader drift has begun. Isolation, pride is one, artificial harmony, as you already mentioned, but isolation is another one. And you notice it. You can feel it, that they're not as connected as they used to be.
I think the ultimate destination of that one is probably him or her leaving and starting their own church or ministry down the road. Because they, like you say, they start to put together a team that agrees with them, really loves them and loyal to them. And the next thing you know, they've opened up another church down the road.
Oh gosh,
I've seen it.
Oh, I've seen it. I mean, in our world, we're coaching hundreds of pastors in one way or another through our programs, whatever. But there's never a month that we're not dealing with 3, 4, 5 of those. And then it's like, there you go. Right now it's literally happening right now with a guy and his church of about 500, about 100 people are about to go that way. And, the drift started happening a long time ago, never got dealt with. And it's now a little bit too late because now he's going over there. And then the church split happens, or as we like to call it now, church plant. But which is completely farce and false. It's not a church plant. You're just eating on someone else's table because you couldn't do it yourself.
Yes.
And that's a fact. And so anybody that goes, well, we're starting a few weeks, we're not going to poach anybody. We're just going to be on the other side of town. I'm like, you don't have what it takes to start. So stop trying to make it feel like it's okay and justified. It's not okay and justified at all.
This goes back to your earlier comment about a guy who ends up on third and thinks he had a triple.
Right, exactly.
I've seen that so often in campus pastors who really want to preach and are convinced that they're the guy. Well, fine, that's great. Go start your church. Don't drag on the church that's there or pull from the people. Go to another town or whatever. But I don't know. I see it so many times.
It drives me insane. You have to recognize the drifting. And I'll give you a couple quick examples.
Okay.
Moses goes up to Mount Sinai. 6 weeks later, he comes back down and everybody has built a golden calf. Now, there, I can't theologically prove this, but did the drifting happen 6 weeks while he was up on the mountain, or did it start happening 6 months or 6 years before?
That's good.
Where did the drift start happening? Go to world history. Julius Caesar, he's got 62 senators. He calls them whatever they call them on his Senate team. All 62 agree to murder him. Okay. How long does it take to get 62 people to commit to murder? That's not a 1 hour conversation.
Yes.
I have to believe that the drifting started 2 or 3 years before, and maybe Julius Caesar recognized it but never dealt with it, and then it finally happened. That's what happens. The drift is always before. And when you mentioned campus pastors, here's the tension, if I may. And if you want to jump into another one, just interrupt me.
No, please, go.
The tension.
Run with it.
The tension is between, especially with campus pastors,
Yep.
the tension is between the second and first chair. Here's why. You are a campus pastor with first chair responsibilities with a second chair title.
That's true.
And that tension between the first chair and the second chair is real.
Yeah,
you have a first chair responsibility with a second chair title, and it's real. Here's what has to happen and why that tension takes place. It's a tension between submission and authority at the same time. It's a tension between your direction and the leader's direction at the same time. It's a tension between your strength and your lead pastor's weakness at the same time. It's a tension between creativity and boundaries at the same time. You have to wrestle with that tension and know that that's there. For lead pastors to ignore it is crazy. And it's not just with campus pastors. If you got a killer youth pastor, a killer associate pastor, the tension's there. And if you don't address that tension and keep your heart right, what's going to happen is the associate pastor, the youth pastor, the campus pastor, they're going to begin to think things like this. Things would be better if I was in charge.
Yeah.
And then you're going down a wrong road. It's a tension between the first and second chair. It's not I always say this, Phil, it's not a problem to solve. It's a tension to manage. Yes. It's not going to go away.
Yeah.
So,
well, I see that in my world. I see it between full-time employees and freelancers or consultants. It's a completely different mindset, And, I've often thought, as I get older, I'll maybe go full-time working with some big organization or something like that. And then I'm thinking, I don't know, I've spent my whole career working for myself. I don't think I could ever shift to that kind of mindset because it's a huge shift.
It is a shift. And if you're a campus pastor, associate pastor, youth pastor, whatever, that's the role you're in.
Yeah.
And it's never your job to replace what God put in place. Yeah. So you support that lead pastor. You don't, and you have a tension, but you wrestle with the tension and you keep the heart right.
That's good. I love that. All right, let's move on. Number 4, a critical spirit. Now, I've never met a Christian with a critical spirit ever. So
I don't know what churches you've been to, but I've never been to a church where there wasn't one.
But like you say, they don't emerge. The critics don't emerge overnight. It takes a while. Talk about that.
It does. Yeah. It kind of, and I talk a little bit about it in the book, in the article, whatever. There's a shift that begins to happen. I think when you're a lead pastor and you have team members that are starting to have a critical spirit, here's one shift. They move from having great questions to having a questioning spirit.
Oh, that's a good line. Say that again.
They move from having great questions to having a questioning spirit. It's very different. I want great questions. Like, hey, man, how can we do this better? I've been thinking like, okay, that is better. Let's do it that way. Wow. Hey, why do we do it this way? Hey, I love that. But when it becomes a questioning spirit, that's when there's an issue. And they start to become critical of everything. And you notice that the great questions went to a questioning spirit. You notice that they come with more problems than they come with solutions. Yeah. You notice that they're starting to get a little critical towards other people. They're getting critical towards you. They're getting critical towards the church. And it's the tone. It's the way they say it. And when that's happening, they're starting to drift. Now, there is an extremely high level chance that critical spirit is bleeding into their leaders, their volunteers,
yes,
their staff member friend that shares an office next to them. To think that they've kept it to themselves is insane. They haven't kept it to themselves.
No. Yeah.
They've begun to share it. But that's where that you start feeling that critical spirit. Man, you've got to call that out. Not in a mean, negative, harsh way, but hey, I just been noticing, Phil, that you seem like your questions are a little bit more of a questioning spirit than they are a great question.
Yeah.
I noticed that you come with more problems and solutions. Tell me what's happening. If you'll open it up, there may be an opportunity to heal a moment. But if you ignore it and live in artificial harmony, you're never going to be able to solve that critical spirit.
Yeah, well, in the creative world, we spend a lot of time talking about criticism, being critical of a project, or how to deliver feedback to people. And we have kind of a joke that a real creative person can start with a blank page. Everybody else, once they see something on the page, they feel confident to criticize it. So the people with the most critical spirits generally don't have good ideas. They're just being critical.
Right. There's a funny line that I always say with pastors and leaders is that for me, I've made a rule that I don't receive constructive criticism from someone who's never constructed anything.
That's good. That's good.
It just, and you know what else I've noticed? High level friends in my life. You and I have a mutual friend in Sam Chan. Dan Ryland is another high level friend in my life. Larry Osborne's another high level friend in my life. Okay. They always want to bring me up. Mm-hmm. Those below me always want to bring me down.
Yeah, true.
It seems like that happens. And the reason I think people do that, by the way, is because I think people like to bring you down to a level that's comfortable for themselves.
Absolutely.
And the reason they do that is because your desire for excellence threatens their mediocrity.
Yeah.
It's a threat.
I agree 100%. We always say that feedback is delivered best in an atmosphere of trust. If you really trust people, you could be critical of what they've done or their project or whatever, but it's got to be in an atmosphere of trust.
Yeah, absolutely.
Skepticism doesn't work. All right, let's move on.
Yep.
Number 5, division through competing visions. That you call passion. How does that happen? Competing visions. Now this could be campus pastors. It could be a lot of different people with a competing vision.
Well, in that idea of the competing vision, I think it's important to note that when we hear vision, we think of something big. Oh my gosh, they're doing a $2 million renovation, or they're launching a third campus, or they're starting a leadership academy, or I don't know, some big thing.
Right.
It doesn't have to be, it usually isn't going to be those big things. It's more about the culture and the values. So it'll sound like this. Hey, you and I are on the staff, or you're a board member, or you're a leader, and I'm an associate pastor. And the lead pastor's name is Bob. And I'll say, Phil, I like when Bob speaks. I mean, it's great, but we need to be more verse by verse. Or, yes, I love Pastor Bob, but man, we don't do enough for the homeless here. We don't do enough for, what am I really doing? I'm casting a vision different than the vision of the leader that I'm called to serve. Yes. It's not like some big $2 million project or some renovation or a leadership academy. He feels called to teach this way, and it's his vision. And I'm combating that vision. He feels called that we should have our missions dollars going here. And I'm saying, wait a minute, we should have our missions dollars going here. It shows up not in what we would classify as the big vision. It shows up in the culture. It shows up in the values. It shows up in the practices. That's the behaviors. That's where the competing vision takes place. And it's never straightforward. He doesn't know what he's doing. It's like, I love him and I love Bob, but,
True.
It's always that way. And you cannot cast a vision different than the vision of the leader that you serve. That's not our job. Our job is to support. And two things I would say about that. One is, if you're an associate pastor listening to this podcast, And you're like, but what do I do with my, I do have frustrations. You talk to the lead pastor. You find a trusted, godly person on the outside of your church, and you have conversations with them to help them, let them help reshape your thought, mind, heart, whatever it is. On the outside, you don't talk about it with staff, and you sure in the world do not talk about it with people that go to the church. You never bring sheep into a shepherd's conversation.
Oh, that's good.
And that's what people do. Don't do that. Find someone on the outside you trust. Complain to them all you want. That's what they're there for. You can say whatever you want. You can be mean if you want to that one person on the outside that you know is going to correct you and tell the truth.
Wow, this is a lesson in stopping church splits right here. I'll tell you what. All of these things kind of lead in that direction. Side gigs. Yeah. Don't get me started. Last thing, the last point in your article was the gradual shutdown of a leader. Sometimes it's disguised as faithfulness. Explain that a little bit.
Yeah, you'll see that when they start to gradually shut down. And the toxic part is, the hard part. The hard part to recognize is you look at it as faithful. Hey, he shows up. He does his part. He's doing what you say to do. He's faithful. I love the
line. I love your line. I'm in a quiet season right now.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. No, you're not. You're being judgmental, and you don't want to let it.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. So when you have that kind of tuned as faithfulness, but there's a gradual shutdown. They're not going to the meeting. They're just pulling away. They're not speaking up anymore in a positive way, maybe even not in a negative way, because the other one was more about a critical spirit. You have great questions, but now you have a questioning spirit. Okay, that's different. An isolation is you pulled back. The gradual shutdown is you're still there in the meeting, but your heart is distancing yourself. And you're starting, you can feel it as a pastor. You can feel like it's a little different. Something's happening, and it's disguised. It can be like disguised as faithfulness. And what I mean by that is, hey, I'm here. And maybe I'm not saying anything negative, and I show up, I do my job, don't I? But you're gradually shutting down. Here's the thing I always love to say is that faithfulness says, I won't say anything bad about you. Loyalty says, I won't let anybody else say anything bad about you.
Oh, that's good.
Silence is approval. And if you're a staff member and listening to this podcast and you have the youth pastor complaining to you, your silence is approval. Don't just go, well, I understand. No, I mean, hey, I get it. You just kind of mumble through no. Hey, if you have a problem with the lead pastor, go to the lead pastor.
Yeah.
Because I'm telling you, this isn't going to work if you keep doing this. We can't have this kind of friendship if you keep being critical. Go to the lead pastor. Matthew 18 says, go to your brother at once. Go to them and deal with it. But anyway, so you can't just be faithful, because that says, I won't talk bad about you. The Lord says, I won't let anybody else talk bad about you. That's what we have to have. We have to have that kind of loyalty.
Well, for the record, all of these things are not about the pastor or the leader being a dictator, being a god. Not. These are about how to keep unity in an organization, how to move forward well, and how to be a leader under a senior leader.
Right.
This is really good. I mean, you make a great point at the end of the article that leaders cannot outsource accountability.
Right.
That's 100%. Very powerful. Talk about that.
Yeah. So, it's here's the way that I would say this is, first, as the leader, the primary leader, you're going to have tough conversations. You can't say to your associate, hey, have that conversation with them. You're going to have the conversation with them. That's number one. But accountability, like you said, not outsourcing accountability. Accountability shouldn't just flow from top to bottom. It should flow from left to right. Top to bottom is, I'm the lead pastor, you're on my staff, Phil, and you're like, I'm not going to say anything, but he's got a real problem with the youth pastor. It's like, hopefully he deals with it, hopefully he sees it. And now that's all on me. No. You're on staff with that youth pastor, that children's pastor. You need to pull them aside and say, hey, man, lately in staff, you've been pretty sharp. and you've been kind of pulling back. What's going on? I just want to encourage you to watch your heart. If you got a thing, you got to go talk to the lead pastor. That's peer-to-peer accountability. Accountability can't just be top to bottom. It has to be left to right.
Yeah, that's really strong stuff. So, I just think that maybe the point of today is leaders have to really pay attention, because these things are almost invisible for a long, long time until they're not. And by the time they get visible, it may be too late to fix. So this is really good stuff. What have we left out? Anything? Give me a last thought that every leader should know.
Yeah. Well, one thing I always say, and it's written throughout the book, Saving Your Church from Itself, is you have to know this. Two things I would say. One is when the enemy takes a run at your church, and he will. When the enemy takes a run at your church, he doesn't do it to those who attend it. He does it to those who lead it. Wow. It's never the attender. You need to know that. You need to be aware of that. Okay. The other thing you need to be aware of is it's let's say that, Phil, you've got 10 staff members. What Jesus said to Peter, he said, Peter, this is such a powerful phrase that I think people skip right over. He was talking about the disciples. Jesus said, Peter, the enemy is sifting among you. It was a warning.
It's true.
And I would say to you, if you were the pastor you got 10 people on your staff, 12 people, I would say, Phil, and if I was with your staff, I'd say, hey, staff, just know the enemy's sifting among you. He's looking for a crack in someone's armor, and he's going to slowly get his fingernail in that crack and start spreading it apart. And it always feels justified in your mind. It always feels okay in your mind. You'll find 4 or 5 people that will cheer you on. Just know that the enemy is sifting among you. And to not accept that as reality is only going to set you up for future pain. You have to know it's happening. It doesn't mean you got to be a dictator. No. It doesn't mean you're going around looking for people to do something wrong. No. You're mindful. And the Bible says, know the state of your flock, the state of your team. Is everything okay? Everybody on track? Everybody moving in the right direction? Anybody getting misaligned? Is there an issue I need to deal with? Yeah. You got to know that because the enemy is sifting among you. And for a lead pastor to go, no, we're healthy. I'm like, you don't think he's looking for a crack? He's looking for a little problem, a little chink in the armor so he could start messing with one of the staff members who will 2 years from now, because he's incredibly patient, the enemy, that's going to just absolutely devastate the church. The church I mentioned earlier, the guy's taking 100 people.
Yeah.
I'm thinking, you think the enemy just worked that out in the last 3 weeks? Or was it 3 years ago?
Yeah.
When he didn't guard his heart. 2 years ago when it started. 1 year ago when he started having conversations and the pastor recognized it but didn't deal with it. Oh, no. The enemy's extremely patient. So just remember, when the enemy takes a run at your church, he's not going to do it to those who attend it. He'll do it to those who lead it every time. And
unbelievable.
Secondly, is the enemy is sifting among you. Just don't be crazy dictator, but just know you got to keep a pulse on it to make sure it stays aligned. That's part of your job to know the state of your flock.
That's good stuff. So where do people find out more about you? ChurchBoom?
Yeah. Church, a couple things. One is churchboom.org. And if you're listening and you're a church under 100 and you're like, we need help, go to churchboom.org. You can sign up right there. It's free. It doesn't matter. But we have churchboom.org there for all things. You can reach out to me there. You can reach out, to any of us and on our team and look at some of that. If any of the books, they're on Amazon. They're everywhere.
And you got a new book. You got a new book, right? Making Vision Happen.
I do. Yeah. That one just came out a few months ago. Making Vision Happen. And it is all about why some people have the ability to make vision happen and some don't, and how you can change that in your life. It's all about that. So, yeah.
Well, we'll put all this information in the show notes because I'll tell you, people, if you're not a pastor and you're listening or watching, send this to your pastor or send this to 5 pastors because this is stuff that pastors and leaders of ministry organizations need to hear. This is so vitally important. So again, thanks for coming on.
Of course.
I may have you back because I feel like there's so much more to talk about.
Anytime.
Well, I really enjoyed that. I resonate because I've been in so many situations with churches that really struggled with many of these issues. And I tell you, I can't tell you the number of times I've seen a staff member that was drifting in one of these ways, either a critical spirit, isolation, any number of ways. And I've had to call it to the attention of a ministry leader, pastor. Sometimes they recognize it, sometimes they're oblivious. And I just think this is a wake-up call to be alert to shifts in the thinking of your staff. It's so important. And you don't have to be a pastor. You can be the president of a company and really learn a lot from today's episode. So check out Chris. We'll have all the information from him in the show notes. And I encourage you, go to philcooke.com, sign up for my weekly newsletter. I do a newsletter that's 5 of my top blog posts I send out every week. And you don't have to go to my website anymore. You can just click on those top 5 stories and see what I'm thinking, what I'm writing about, because it's what you wrestle with probably every day. So I'd encourage you to sign up for my newsletter, get my books. We're doing a couple reprints of my books. Some of them have been so successful, I'm having to reprint them, and we're just incredibly grateful for that. And also, I would encourage you to go to the Influence Lab, influencelab.com. Support the work we're doing to train Christians internationally to use the media to share the gospel. We just got back from Jordan in the Middle East, where we had a training session with almost 170 church media professionals, pastors, filmmakers from all over the Middle East. We had them from countries like Egypt and Syria, Morocco. It was just really fascinating to be with those media professionals who are Christians, who are really looking for how we can use media more effectively to share the gospel in a very difficult environment that most of them were in. So that's the support you give us allows us to keep doing training sessions like that and keep the gospel alive through media in places where churches struggle. We can't really have live meetings. We have to be very careful about an evangelistic presence, but through media, we can keep the gospel alive. So go to influencelab.com, support us, help us make that happen because it's doing such a great work. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you on the next episode.